Hi, everybody. This is Kathy L. Murphy, the Pulpwood Queen, reporting from my little cabin in the woods, which has gone all romantic comedy tonight because I am channeling Doris Day because Robert Gwaltney and I, who's my co-host, we're going to be discussing the fabulous Rock Hudson Doris Day film called Pillow Talk. So I've got my pillows, I've got my satin pajamas. Robert, how are you this evening, this Saturday?
I am wonderful. I'm ready to talk pillow talk.
Well, I'm over the top because there is a scene in this film where Doris Day is a decorator in New York, and you have to watch the film. But there's a scene in it where she goes to decorate Rock Hudson's bachelor man cave apartment. And when I was a little kid, I've told you this before, but I was in love with this over the top apartment. And I honestly think that I've been copying it ever since. And of course, you know, if it's over the top, that's why I wore this tiara. It's very bohemian, and I think it's supposed to be a Chinese one, but
I love it.
yeah. So we had some pretty cool people in this film too. Of course, Tony Randall is almost in all the Rock Hudson films, and it's always a great combination when you get those two having their repartee back and forth. And then Thelma Ritter, I was going to look up, Robert. Do you know if she's related at all to the other Ritter actors?
You
Uh,
know, I don't know, but I will do a quick Google.
you know, her the guy that starred in Three's Company and his son were always two of my favorite actors. And the son is still doing a lot of great work out there. So I didn't know if, I mean, Ritter's kind of a different name. They hail from, his father, Tex Ritter, hails from Carthage, Texas, which is just down the road from me. So wouldn't that be weird coincidence? But it's not every day you hear the word
No,
Ritter.
no, it's there. I'm not immediately seeing anything
Well,
about her personal life, but we'll figure that out.
she is a comedic genius, and this is another reason why I'm always upset they do not have a comedy category for the Academy Awards, because if anybody could have won the comedy category, it would have to be Doris Day and Rock Hudson films, because I know everybody likes films where Hollywood stars play the more serious roles, but there are some people, actors out there, that I think when they play comedy roles, I like that even better, like Cary Grant or George Clooney. Just trying to think of some others. Did you find out anything?
No, nothing on her, but we were talking about romantic comedy because this is a 1959 romantic comedy. If regards so, um, Doris Day was actually nominated for an Oscar for her role. Thelma Ritter, Best Supporting Actress, Best Story and Screenplay. It won for Best Story and Screenplay in
I did not
1959.
know this. How did I miss that?
Yes. Um, so it did quite well during award season, and it has been touted as the greatest film success of 1959.
Well, isn't that interesting? I was all of 3 years old when that film came out, but I can remember watching it over and over as a child. And whenever I get in those, what I call those blue funks, I always put on a Doris Day, Rock Hudson film, Bringing Up Baby, Cary Grant and Audrey Hepburn. And this film, it was the first film that Doris Day did with Rock Hudson. You would never believe it because they had so much on screen chemistry. They actually were best friends for life. And I just think it's amazing. I mean, Doris Day is a real trooper. I read her autobiography years ago, and she was in a terrible car accident where she had a lot of injury. And, she was a dancer, singer, she could do everything. And it really set her back for some time. But this was, I'm going to have to go and check that out about the Academy Awards. And I guess you can be up for all those things, but even if there isn't a category for comedy, right?
It's just in regard to film, and it was considered worthy of Academy Award.
Well, it was. It's still funny to this day. I wish they'd still make more films like that because it was just hysterical.
Great chemistry, great
Oh my
chemistry.
gosh.
And the
Yes.
premise, and the premise is simple, but it's wonderful. It's a bit of a farce. Doris Day plays a very elegant, um, talented interior designer, and Rock Hudson plays character Brad, who is a Broadway composer and womanizer, and they share a party line, and they don't know what the other looks like. They're sharing this party line. Um, Doris Day, her character Jan, is wanting her own private line. However, there's a backlog in the city of installing these lines. So every time Day goes to make a phone call, Rock Hudson is on the phone wooing one of his potential girlfriends or conquests. So it infuriates her. So Rock Hudson's character actually sees Doris Day out and realizes who she is. So he comes up with a false persona, a Texan named Rex Stetson, and begins to woo her. And of course, romance and hilarity ensues.
It is priceless. And for most people today, you wouldn't even know what a party line was. But I will tell you that when I lived in Jefferson, for years, my sister-in-law was still on party line. There were 5 families in her area of the county that were still on party line. And I know that kids today they don't even know what a rotary dial phone is, or let alone a party line. But for those that don't know, a party line was a shared line with neighbors in your vicinity. In this case, they were nearby, and they weren't in the
Yeah,
same
they were in
complex.
separate. They were in different apartment buildings, and they shared this. They shared this line. And so you're right. So you would pick up the phone, and someone could already be on it talking, and then you would just have to hang up, and you check again to see if the phone line was clear and there was a dial tone. My grandparents, my Gwaltney grandparents who lived in the country, they had party lines, and when I was a little boy. So I remember what a party line is like.
Did you sneak and listen in?
I did. I did.
Did too. My sisters and I get in so much trouble because we pick it up real slow, and it'd be my grandmother's neighbor, and they would be gossiping, talking about what was going on in that area of the county, and we'd just be listening, and then we'd laugh or something. And I can remember very distinctly the neighbor going, "Wait a minute, is that one of Helen's girls?" Which my grandmother's name was Helen. And they go, "Who's on the line?" And we'd all laugh and click, like we hung up, nobody would know.
Yeah, right.
But it's funny, and that's why I love these shows so much, because they're almost a little snapshot of history too, because of the things that they do, and the fact that how people used to dress for going out for drinks and dinner. I have to say, I thought when I grew up that was going to happen to me, and I was utterly disappointed, because I remember going on a date when I was a senior in high school with a college fraternity boy that was my sister's brother's or something. And I wore a pantsuit. It's 1973. I wore a pantsuit with a real wide lapels, white, and my stacked platforms. And we went to the fraternity house to meet the other couple going with us. And then we went to it was Lady Sings the Blues. And they had on blue jeans and, just like casual clothes. And here I was dressed like, the way I thought you should be if you were going on an adult date. And I never felt so uncomfortable in my life. That movie also lasted like 3.5 hours, and I had to go to the bathroom so bad, but I was too embarrassed to excuse me so I could walk out in front of all of them, so
You suffered.
I suffered through that all I can remember is I had to pee through everything with, gosh, that was a great movie though. So
So
back to the film. Back
yeah,
to the film. Thelma Ritter plays the housekeeper, and kind of
she's
everything does everything.
always a little tipsy. Her character.
Tipsy, honey, she could drink everybody underneath the table. And the elevator man was priceless too. What I love about these older films is what care they took, even in the shortest one line characters. I mean, they were given the importance, they weren't just passing, scenery. Everybody had a role, no matter how small, they still had importance. And whoever wrote the script, I looked at it when I first watched it. I watched it a couple of days ago again. I've forgotten now, but oh, it's just probably the best repartee between a girl and a guy I've ever seen. It's hysterical.
It actually was written by a team of people: Russell Rouse, Maurice Richland, Stanley Shapiro, and Clarence Green. And in 2009, it was entered into the National Film Registry by the Library of Congress for being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant and preserved.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
And I was going to check to see who was the costume designer, because I think, if I recall, every single film Doris Day was in, she liked to do her own wardrobe. She was
So,
very particular about her ensembles, her coats, her gloves, her purse, her hats, her
so in
fur.
this particular film, it was costume designer Jean Louis
Oh, well, yeah.
designed 18 or 24 costumes for her to wear. Um, and I don't know that I'm not going to pronounce this correctly. Lacan et C lent about $500,000 of jewels for her to wear in the film.
Do you remember the one that was kind of a choker with all those green jewels? I'd
Yeah,
forgotten it. And the earrings, and
gorgeous.
I thought, oh my gosh, she really had quite the roar. But, Rock Hudson was always pretty dapper in this film too, as Tony Randall. Even the elevator guy had great, they wore
Yeah,
costumes, uniforms, I guess you should say. And Thelma always had on the same hat and coat.
she did. Yeah, she's a bit shabby, but yeah, always the same.
She was just, I've known a lot of women like her. In fact, Tawana never, my executive director, never drank a drop. But if anybody could have been like Tawana, it was Thelma Ritter, because Tawana was an awful lot like that character. Because no matter how grumpy and grouchy she seemed, she always made you laugh. You know, she always makes every film I've ever seen her in, she steals the show. You know,
I don't. So there was this term that we used back in with my group of friends in Tallahassee, Florida. Whenever we would get a good parking spot, we'd say, "Oh, Doris Day parking," and it comes from the fact that anytime Doris Day needed to park in New York City, there was a parking spot. She
yeah,
never, I mean, she just always immediately parked. So we would always say, if we got into a parking spot easily, we would just sort of go, "Oh, Doris Day parking."
I'm going to use that. That is definitely something I'm going to use. And the other interesting thing about this movie, I've told you that my absolutely favorite Rock Hudson film is Man's Favorite Sport.
Mhm.
And there's a scene in it in San Francisco where he tries to move a car that is parked by um, um, the co-star in the film, is in his parking spot, and it's tiny. And how Rock Hudson can get his big, tall frame into these little bitty cars. That was so funny when he flung his leg over the door of the car, and she goes, I don't think this is going to work. He goes, no, no. He's quite a tall man. And it's ironic too that he played the Texas accent was pretty funny to me, because I don't really know anybody, maybe out in West Texas talks like that. But he also did the film with Elizabeth Taylor, set out in West Texas.
You're a giant.
Giant. And that was quite a film where he played this oil man,
Mhm.
with the Texas accent. Um, it's fun to see. And I think Rock Hudson, wasn't he from something where like Ohio? And his real name isn't Rock Hudson, of course.
Right. Yeah, it's not Rock
I
Hudson.
can't remember what his name is, but it's definitely not a
Yeah,
movie
let
star
me do
name.
a quick Google.
It's like Clarence or um, oh, it'll come up in a minute. But they came up with a Rock Hudson. And anybody that gets the name Rock usually makes it pretty big in film. Remember
Well,
that.
yeah, you would have to. So his name, he was born Roy Harold Shearer Jr.
Harold. Okay. Yeah, I can kind of see him as a Roy.
Roy, yeah.
But yeah, I think Rock Hudson is a much better name. And it was priceless. All of his antics in the film. He has a way of turning. I mean, he can do one character and he could switch like that. And Tony Randall, the way he was manipulated in the film was priceless. I hope everybody watches this film. It's quite it's laugh out loud funny, but
Yeah.
at the same time, it makes me long and yearn for those days of the late 50s, early 60s where people dressed for dinner and had cocktails. And I want all that to come back, the dating but it's not going to happen now, not with COVID and everything going on. So I'm just a true romantic, Robert. I just love those kind of films, and I kind of get lost in the romanticism of these relationships. So, your favorite part of the film was what?
Oh gosh. I mean, there's so many parts. There's a moment when they're in a club and they're singing together.
Oh yeah,
And I cannot remember the name of the song, but I always thought that was a
da
cool.
ya da da da
Yeah,
da,
yeah, yeah.
something
And,
like that.
and
Yeah.
then there was like a sort of a clap groove to it.
And he
I
did not. Rock Hudson doesn't have
no rhythm.
no rhythm whatsoever. And that was kind of funny to me. His voice isn't bad. It was just funny. But anybody to me that will sing with abandon, I don't care if they're good or bad. I just find that absolutely charming.
Exactly. Well, I love that moment where they're on the phone together and they're both in the bathtub
Yeah, and they put the feet up,
and the feet are up. Yeah. I mean, that was really wonderful.
split
Um,
screen type thing.
yeah, split screen.
That was
The film, they did not want the production code folks weren't going to allow them to call it pillow talk because they thought it was too risque. They were going to make them call it Any Way the Wind Blows.
what? That
Yeah,
doesn't even make any
I
sense.
know they were going to call it Any Way the Wind Blows, but they managed to get it changed to Pillow Talk.
Well, the pillow talk was because he'd call after the day, and or
And talk about great film opening with the theme song Pillow Talk and the pillows being tossed across the screens.
throwing the pillows. I
Yeah.
loved it. And they got the guy on one side and the girl on the other, and
Mhm.
she had on the satin pajamas, and I just loved it. Yeah, the way they started the films and ended the films too were so iconic and stylistic of that era. You can immediately tell a film from that type, especially theirs, by the way they do the graphics and everything. It was a beautiful package.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful package. And I can remember as a kid, they did not give them like, they're not the Barrymores or they're not, and I thought it's kind of like books. There's literary fiction and then there's book that you just love beyond words, like Gone with the Wind. Now, tell me the name of that. They were going to call it that again.
Any Way the Wind Blows.
Where is there? It's not set in Chicago. It's set in New York. So where's the wind?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't quite get the meaning in the context of the film.
it doesn't make any sense. I actually wondered a little bit about pillow talk because I thought there could have been something, but it just stays on. It's like pajama party or all the beach blanket bingo. They tried to make it just, a theme. The name of the movies were always themes. And but I think pillow talk's perfect.
Yeah, I do too.
So it's quite fantastic, and it always has a charming ending. In fact, my favorite scene in the whole film is when he comes and busts her door down on her apartment. Can you imagine? He kicks her door in. She's in bed. He wraps her up in an electric blanket with a cord tracking, which cracked me up, and carries her out with her kicking and fighting all the way. And everybody's just like, oh my.
Doesn't he like pop her on the backside? He's like, gives her a swat.
He goes, well, of course I'm going to carry you over the threshold. After all, I assumed you were redecorating this apartment because we're to be married. And the look on her face was just perfect timing. Where she, she just totally changes everything. But we have to remember that there was a lot of pressure on women, and especially professional women, about getting married. And here she was trying to start a career and do all this stuff. In fact, the guy who played the decorating, who ran the decorating house, he was great too. I really think.
Did you ever watch the spoof? It was fun. A film that they did, I don't know, maybe about a decade or so ago. It was sort of spoofing the genre. It was called Down with Love, starring Ewan McGregor and Renee Zellweger. That was fun.
It was fun, and I liked it, but and the clothing and the sets and everything were cute, but it didn't quite have the zing that the writers had in this show. But I think it's interesting, the team of writers who wrote it, they were both men and women, right?
I am assuming so. Let me scroll back up to the names. Well, I don't know. It looks like they were all men.
Wait a minute. I thought you said
Russell Rouse, Maurice Richland, Stanley Shapiro, and Clarence Green.
Oh, they were. Because most of the shows, television shows today and everything, it's starting to turn, but most of the shows today are written by really young guys. And well, that's interesting. Well, I have to say they were really romantic back then too. So that's also interesting. There's more and more women film directors and writers, and I just hope it gets back to that type of writing. That's really interesting. It's always fun to talk to you, Robert, because you always know things that I have missed when I go back and I was watching little snippet trailers on YouTube, and I'd forgotten how tacky the apartment was that she redecorated. But when I was a child, I thought it was the most beautiful apartment in the world.
Yeah, well, I remember thinking the same thing, but it's certainly, if you watched the film when you were young, you would think there was an elegance to it.
Well, I mean, I like the I Dream a Genie bottle too.
Right.
You know how it was decorated on the inside? I go, I want that. I want to live in a bottle.
I know. I was fascinated with the inside of the Genie bottle too.
I mean, in her outfit, I can't tell you how many times I practiced, bonk and twitching my nose to Bewitched. I mean, that was a real, now talk about a remake of Bewitched. Nicole Kidman was in one, and man, she nailed. I forgot at times that I wasn't watching Elizabeth Montgomery. She was so good in that role.
Yeah, she did a great job.
That was really, really fun. Well, next week, we're going to be watching another Doris Day film. And I was in hysterics over this one because as a kid, I loved Tarzan books and I used to play Tarzan. And then they get her Doris Day and the guy who used to play the rifleman, I can't think of the actor's name.
James Gardner?
No,
No.
not the main character. The guy who was on the rifleman, the star. They get they're the they're the survivors of the of the shipwreck. And what
Right.
was Doris Day doing on on a cruise ship that crashed? I don't know. But they lived for 7 years on this um, island, and I think they called each other Tarzan and Jane.
Hmm.
And James Garner was just like, oh my God. The scene at the pool that we'll be watching or talking about next week, where he finally discovers that the shoe salesman that she says she was on the island with was not the actual man she was on the island with. So they're at the country club, and the man she was actually on the island gets on the diving board and starts doing these incredible swan dives, and all the women around the pool are just swooning. And it brought back wonderful memories of the country club pool for me, because my dad did that. My dad could swim and dive like nobody's business, and he used to get out on the high dive of the diving board, and he'd jump into the air, and then he'd sit down and bounce back up, and then he'd dive in a swan dive. And I remember all the young girls around the pool would just ooh and ah over my father, and it just brought back that memory. I thought my dad was a dreamy dad. But it's going to be fun to talk about it and see it again. I haven't watched it in a long time. Again, they're having drinks around the pool, and James Garner is, he's on the cusp of remarrying, because he's had her legally declared dead, and he's now marrying this dippo that Doris Day. I have to give her kudos, because she spends most of the movie trying to get him to leave her. And it's adorable. It's adorable. You ever wonder, if you disappeared for 7 years, if somebody be waiting for you if you got back home?
Oh no, I think things would be much changed, I'm afraid.
I don't even think most people wait a year. So the fact that he waited 7 is still pretty amazing. So we'll be watching, and it's called Move Over Darling, right?
Correct? Move Over Darling.
Move Over Darling. And we'll be talking about that and all the antics that Doris Day gets into trying to get James Garner back. So then we decide what movies we're going to do after that?
No, we'll be, I guess you and I will huddle at the conclusion of our film club next week, and we'll come up with our next wonderful list.
I have got a couple of good ones that I was thinking about. Have you seen the film Big Fish?
Yes, some years ago.
That's one of my favorite books of all time, and I think that would be a good one. It's really Southern Gothic magic realism. Mm-hmm. I think that would be a good one to do. And they had, interestingly enough, today they had, or was it yesterday? Somebody said, what was the film that most terrified you as a child? And I thought, oh, that's so easy. It was Hush, Hush, Sweet Charlotte. We just did that film. Right. And now it's like still one of my favorite films. That and The Birds. And more people mentioned The Birds. They mentioned Jaws, The Exorcist. What's the film that most traumatized you as a child?
Oh my gosh. Well, and I think it was a television miniseries when I was a little boy, Helter Skelter. About James Manson. Charles Manson.
Was that a miniseries? I remember watching that.
I remember it being an event on television. And I remember being terrified because I had to have been maybe in the first grade. And I remember being so terrified because it was a thing that had really happened.
Yeah, well, that Hush, Hush, Sweet Charlotte, when the head rolled down the stairs, that I just lost it. Just totally. I think I had nightmares about beheadings or something. But that is... I watched all those scary shows when I was a kid. Alfred Hitchcock Presents. Mm-hmm. I watched Rod Serling's I watched a wonderful, what was Rod Serling's show called? It was Zone,
Oh, the
Twilight Zone,
Twilight Zone.
Twilight Zone. And
And he also did Night Gallery.
Night Gallery, I watched all of those. And I remember they would totally freak me out. The scariest one was I saw where a little girl, her father got her a doll that looked just like her. And she'd take the doll out. It was almost her size and everything. And the doll talked her into, this is how creepy it was, trading places. So the doll became live and she became the doll. And then the doll ran away. And so she was stuck as a, oh.
That's creepy.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really weird now because I have all these doll collections.
I know,
I don't have anything.
And those spooky puppets.
That's spooky. You've got to watch the film Penhali. It's an Indian film, and it's about these puppets, which are made in Jaipur. They're string puppets, and in this movie, it's a fantasy based upon a folk tale and Shah Rukh Khan plays, of course, the lead, and he gets married and leaves to go for 5 years on his wedding at night, which isn't consummated, to go do this banking business for his father. And a ghost takes his form and comes back and assumes to be her husband. And throughout the film, you've got those the puppets are talking to each other. Film. I've watched it a zillion times. I love puppets. I loved Lamb Chop when I was a kid, and Charlie Horse, and I watched all the puppets on Mr. Rogers and Captain Kangaroo and Romper Room and Sherry Lewis. I just love puppets, but the Charlie McCarthys, I have to say, they really freak me out. And my best friend in Jefferson for years was a master ventriloquist. And she had a vent that was creepy, as it was the real old wooden hand carved type. And she died of pancreatic cancer. And her children told me that she was to be buried with her little man that always wore a tuxedo. And when it came time for burial, he was gone. They never found him.
That's creepy.
Yeah, I keep thinking about that. I'd be talking to Joyce and she'd have that creepy little guy on her lap, and I'd be talking to her and he'd turn his head towards me and he goes, "You want to be my girlfriend?" I'm telling you, the hair goes up on the back of my neck and I go, "No, I do not. Come on, be my little baby." And I was just like,
See, am I over active imagination? I can almost see him peeking up behind the pillow, behind the chair behind you looking.
Well, what's really funny, about a month after Joyce passed away, she was teaching my daughter how to be a ventriloquist. And Lady was pretty good at it. She was just a little kid, but they used to do shows together. And about a month after she died, I came home from work and there was an old battered leather suitcase sitting in front of the door. And I walked up the steps and I just froze. I'm going, "Oh no, oh please don't let it be that puppet. Don't let it be that puppet." So I just stood there for about 5 minutes and I thought, well, I got to go in. So I pick it up and I carry it in and I set it, and I swear it was 20 minutes or so before I had the courage to open it. And I just knew that puppet was going to be, they call them vents. I knew that vent was going to be there. But when I opened it up, it was a stuffed dog puppet, a bird, and some scripts. And when they were selling all the stuff, they knew she was teaching Lainey. So Lainey has all of the scripts from all of her shows. I mean, she used to go to the National Ventriloquist Convention and teach classes. And do you remember the nighttime television show called Soap?
Yes.
There was a guy on it who was a ventriloquist, and he was a real good friend of hers, and they used to do all these shows together. But I think that more than likely that Vent ended up in one of those ventriloquist museums. They've got one, I think, in Cincinnati or something. Every once in a while I get on there and I look for him. Because now if his head pops up behind there, you're
hello, baby.
You're in big trouble. I'll start bringing up that crazy thing that happened to you when you were working on your book with that voice on the tape recorder. So,
spooky.
Oh, that still just chills me out. Well, we're not doing any scary shows, okay?
No.
I just don't want to do anything that freaks me out. So, will you be thinking of some shows that you want to be watching? And I'm just kind of getting on there. I really enjoyed Miss Firecracker because I hadn't seen that since that movie came out. But I'm just trying to think of maybe some other little quirky films that I wish we could watch Cold Comfort Farm, but I can't find that film anywhere. It's not on any of the streaming services, and that is based on a 1931 British classic, and it is, I know it's set in England, but it is so Southern Gothic. There's a matriarch of the Starcutters, and everybody thinks she's lost it because when people go to take her meals, she goes, "There was something nasty in the woodshed." Every time she'd say it, I just bust out laughing, and you got to watch the whole film to find out what the nasty thing was in the woodshed. But it's priceless. So if I ever find that movie, we're going to do that one. So tonight, Saturday night, it is so humid here that there is actually fog on all my glass windows day and night now. And I've got the thermostat set at 74. It is so humid. How's it there?
It is terribly hot, extremely humid.
Where are we going to be able to go where we can get away from this summertime heat? Because if you can find a spot,
yeah,
I'm raring to go, because I don't even want to go outside. It's so bad. And the insects are really bad this year. And oh, Robert, I've got to tell you before you go, because your book's coming up in January, the cicada tree. Gosh, why wouldn't I remember that? Anyway, I went out and I'm finding shells everywhere, and they're just everywhere. But I found a complete dead one in my driveway that's perfectly formed. So I have a project. I've been known to work with resin. So just wait. It's just the wings are beautiful on it. And Mandy Haynes, the executive director of our International Pulpwood Queens and Timber Guys Book Club, she found the coolest thing and was watching it unfold. It's pretty amazing. I wish I would come upon that, but I haven't yet. I have now just been dealing with cats that have been in the house too long. So how's your little doggies doing this summer?
They're doing fine. Templeton has been a little bit under the weather, but he's getting on up there in years. He's
Do they like to go outside?
You know, they're really indoor for very short periods of time in the backyard, but in this heat, they're ready to get right back in.
My crazy cats love to go outside and they just sweat. I just think there's something wrong with them. But right now they're in that mode where they're pouncing on each other. So it's getting pretty crazy here. Well, have a wonderful weekend. Now, do you know what tomorrow is?
I don't.
It's August the 1st.
Okay. Yeah, it's August 1st.
So guess what's coming out tomorrow?
What's coming out tomorrow?
Our Reading Nation magazine.
Oh, that's right. Yes, August. I'm looking forward to the new edition.
Oh my gosh. I've already read it cover to cover. And Mandy who's our editor-in-chief and publisher, has just blown it out of the water this issue. So authors, if you're watching this, she has some pages still left. If you're a member and you're an author, it's $10 a page. You want to get in this magazine.
It's the deal.
It's really really going to be an incredible issue. So be ready for it tomorrow. And you just have a great weekend. And we'll see you next week for Move Over Darling. Okay?
Have a good one. Stay cool.
Bye, Robert. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.